Here are the new calves. If y'all, there's a one right there. And these are all the new calves. I'm pretty sure that's all of them right there. There should be 10 of them. And, that's them right there. I don't really want to get too close to them because, I just brought them in 2 days ago. And, I don't really want to, freak them out, right? And I don't want them having running around. They're all laying in the grass, chewing cud. So I'm just going to leave them alone. Oh, there's another one. There's another one right there. So that's the 10 of them. I was like, wait, there's 9 of them, but there's 10 of them right there. But that's the animals that I brought in a couple of days ago. And these animals, they'll probably end up going to they'll probably go into market with the other animals. All right, y'all want to go take a look at the other animals? I do have a sick animal. I was walking around this morning, and I was taking a look. And I did find a sick animal. And this whole thing about the sick animal right now is that this animal that I got, that I'm pretty sure that this animal has mycoplasma, is that when I first found this animal was sick, it didn't even look that bad. It just kind of looked like he was having a little bit he just didn't look good. And then a couple of days later, and then he's just been going downhill for like 2 weeks straight. I mean, he's been sick for 2 weeks straight. He's had a shot of everything under the sun, and I vaccinated him like 4 or 5 times. And the whole thing about BRD, okay? The whole thing about BRD, and I talk about this all the time, or, it doesn't matter what's causing the BRD. It could be whatever, right? It could be whatever, but the thing that's the whole thing about BRD is that when it spreads, it becomes very difficult to treat. All right, when these animals, if I ever end up with an animal that has BRD, I get on that animal very quickly. All right, because by the time if it spreads, like and I talked about this, especially if you bring home a sick animal, right? If you bring home a sick animal, and that animal gets another animal sick, and those 2 animals get 2 more animals sick, those 4 animals are probably all going to die. All right, they will probably all die. You probably won't be able to fix it once it's spread, okay? And so here are the other animals, right? These are the animals that are going to market in about 3 months. They'll be going to market here in about 3 months. And the animals in the front will probably be going to market at the same time as these animals. They'll probably all go to market together, and they'll probably all hit the scale at about 700 pounds, okay? Except for these tiny little diddly doodads, all right? These tiny little ones, maybe they need another month or something. But the animals in the front will probably be going to the market at the same time as these animals here. And, well, y'all want to go see the sick calf. And, the whole thing about this sick animal is that the animal that I got right now that has, I'm pretty certain has mycoplasma. This animal, when he first got sick, it just looked like he was kind of under the weather. I said, he just kind of looks a little bit wonky. And then it turned into like an ear infection, and then it turned into BRD, and now he's not eating food at all, and he's been sick for like 2 weeks straight, and he'll probably end up dying. All right. And so, that's what I'm concerned about with this animal, because mycoplasma, I've been reading the thing about mycoplasma, is that it spreads very slowly. Mycoplasma spreads very slowly, and it is almost always fatal. Almost always, okay? Almost everybody just flat out says mycoplasma is almost impossible to treat, okay? And so here is the sick animal right here. Y'all want to take a look at the sick animal. Here's the sick animal, okay? That's him right there. I was taking a look at him this morning, and he just looks like he's under the weather. And this is usually when you want to treat BRD, okay? If the animals already started coughing, and the animals already just kind of started not feeling good, and it looks like they're going, the whole thing about BRD, okay, is that number one, it's very contagious. It's usually very contagious. If it spreads, it will almost always kill all of the animals. You probably will not be able to treat it, especially if you're utilizing like a metaphylaxis program, okay? On my farm, I use a metaphylaxis program, If you're using a metaphylaxis, and the whole reason that I use metaphylaxis is because, effectively, if you don't use metaphylaxis, what's going to happen, from what I have personally seen, is that the animals that you bring home, at one point or another, they will all get sick. All right, at one point or another, they will all get sick, and then they will all end up needing a shot of antibiotics anyway. All right, and you definitely don't want that illness spreading. All right, and I talk about animal medications all the time. If you don't, the whole thing about the cattle business, and I talked about this in terms of the human perspective. Effectively, every human being that you know, every single last one of them, every single last human being, except for like in a third world country, effectively all human beings needed antibiotics at some point in their life. They needed antibiotics, okay? Almost everybody. Granted that you're not like in a third world country. And the reason that you're given antibiotics is because if you do not have antibiotics, you will legitimately die from your infection. It could be something very small. All right, it could be like you got a cut on your arm and it got infected. If you don't take antibiotics, you will die. All right, it could be like you had a nasal infection, you had an ear infection, you had bronchitis, or I don't know, is bronchitis bacterial? I don't know, but if you've ever gone to the doctor and the doctor gave you antibiotics, they probably gave you antibiotics because if you did not take the antibiotics, you would have died. All right, and if you go back 100 years, people were dying all over the place from nothing. All right, even the stuff like the Black Plague. That could have been solved with penicillin. Very, very, very realistic example of this. All right, people, massive amounts of people died from the Black Plague. Right, and the Black Plague could have been solved with penicillin. And so, that's the whole thing about animal medication, especially if you're going to bring them home from the sale barn, which I do. I legitimately buy my animals by myself at the sale barn, one at a time, 2 at a time, 3 at a time, 1 at a time, stuff like that. All right, these animals are very high risk. They're around other animals at the sale barn, over 1,000 animals at the sale barn. If one of those animals at the sale barn are sick and they cough on one of your animals and your animal's very highly stressed because they're being moved around in the sale barn, then guess what? Your animal will probably get sick. And from what I have seen, effectively all of the animals end up getting sick. At a certain point, they will all get sick. At a certain point, okay, all of them will. And that's when I started using metaphylaxis. And when I utilized metaphylaxis, I saw a very, very, very positive feedback from that metaphylaxis treatment. That's why I utilize metaphylaxis. I don't use antibiotics because I'm some horrible, malicious person. All right, I use antibiotics because if I don't use the antibiotics, the animals are gonna die. All right, very simple, okay? I give them all of the vaccinations, I give them all of the best vaccinations and everything, and, et cetera, okay? And this morning I did have a sick animal. I have a sick animal. The animal looks like, he just looks like he's under the weather. But the whole thing right now is that I'm pretty certain I have an animal with mycoplasma. And that animal with mycoplasma, if he does have mycoplasma, I don't want the mycoplasma spreading across my herd, okay? Because mycoplasma spreads very slowly, and it's almost always completely fatal, okay? And so the rest of the animals look okay. I checked the animals this morning. I found this one sick calf. If you effectively, if you get, okay, because then I always say that this whole thing about farming, and, when I talk about these things, you have to understand that I actually do this stuff, right? Like, I actually do this in real life. This is not like a make-believe delusional journey for me. All right, I'm not like on a trip to Disneyland. All right, and when you actually take a look at what I do, I legitimately have some of the best results known to mankind, okay? It doesn't matter where you go. I mean, effectively, we're talking about on like a global standard. I effectively have some of the best results known to mankind. If you take a look at my grass is legitimately some of the best grass. All right, if you take a look at my cattle are legitimately some of the best cattle. If you take a look at my business, my business makes an extraordinary amount of money. I do very well for myself, and I do all of this stuff by myself. All right, and I'm giving you my information for free. I give you my information for free, okay? I give you my information for free. I'm not some horrible, malicious person. I'm not giving you the wrong information. I'm not like telling you the wrong thing and then, right? I'm not doing that. I'm giving you my information for free. And when you take a look at what I am doing, I do very well for myself. Let's just call a spade a spade. All right, it just is what it is. I do extraordinarily well for myself, and I'm actually doing better. Right, that's also very important. I would actually say that I increased my income by about 20% over the last week. Over the last 3 days, I increased my income by 20%. And here's the big, and I've already been telling you, the whole thing about this whole thing is that I'm actually, in terms of a forward-thinking idea, what am I looking to do with myself? I would actually anticipate that I more than double my income over the next 5 months. I will more than double my income. If you thought that I made a lot of money, you are going to crap your pants. All right, I will double my income. And I've already told, I will actually probably even more than double my income by the end of the year. Why? Because I'm looking to utilize some debt. And I spoke about debt a couple of days ago, right? When I utilize debt, the whole idea of utilizing debt is that when I take that debt and I go and I purchase myself some assets, like let's take a look at my situation right now, okay? Because I took some debt and I purchased cattle. Why did I do that? And how much debt did I take? Well, when I take a look at my situation, I am very drastically in the net positive. All right, I am very drastically in the net positive. I effectively made such a large amount of money. I don't even know how much money I made. I don't. I made a lot. I don't even know how much, but I made a lot. All right, and so I'm taking a look at my balance sheet. My balance sheet is in the net positive. I took a look at it. I took a look at the overall what's going on with my farm, right? I have all of this grass. It's not like I have to pay any more money. I've already grown the grass. The grass is already here. I've already grown it. All right, so I take a look at it. I don't have to pay any more money. My balance sheet is in the net positive. So I went to the sell barn and I purchased 400-pound commodity animals at commodity prices. I purchased 10 of them. Why did I do that? Because in this situation that I'm in, I have all of these cattle, I have all of this grass, my balance sheet is massively in the net positive. Even if 10 of my animals instantaneously drop dead right now, I could still pay back all of my debt. And I would still have money left over. That's why, okay? It's not going to cost me any more to feed 10 more animals. It's not going to cost me any more. If anything, I'm going to lose money because I have all of that grass and the animals are not eating it. So that's why I did what I did. My balance sheet is massively in the net positive. I made a massive amount of money. I don't know how much I made. I made a lot. I'm massively in the net positive. I took a look at my situation. I have all of this grass. My grass, it's not going to cost me any more to grow, to grow a couple acres more grass. And the grass, I've already grown it. All right, it's already here. The animals can walk around and eat it. I've already grown the grass. So my balance sheet is massively in the net positive. I have a massive excess of grass. That's when I utilize debt. And when I utilize debt, I don't leverage myself 2 to 1. I don't leverage myself 3 to 1. I leveraged myself maybe like 70%. I'm maybe leveraged 70% right now, okay? I'm maybe leveraged 70%. 70% to 1. And realistically, by the end of the year, I would actually want to be leveraged about, I would actually be looking to leverage about 125 to 150%. All right, and why would I do that? Because I get tax benefits for doing that. All right, I get tax benefits. And I've spoken about tax benefits, the whole idea of a tax deduction. And if if you legitimately do not understand what a tax deduction is, then go on the internet and look up what is a tax deduction, or you can call a local accountant and ask them. If I start a business and I purchase a tax deductible asset, and I've already told you this whole thing, right, about tax deductible assets, is that when you have your income and you have a tax deductible asset, you're effectively in a situation where you have to pay taxes on your income. And and I've already said this whole thing about this is that I don't make the rules, okay? I don't make the rules. If you don't like it, then I don't know what to tell you. I mean, the game is the game. All right, don't hate the player, right? If you start a business, and I've already, given you a very realistic look at this, and it's like, if you think that it's unfair, oh my God, this is a guy who generates millions of dollars a year and he doesn't pay any income tax. If you think that it is unfair, then go and start yourself go and start yourself a farm, and then go and purchase whatever 250 cattle a year like I do, and then run all of those cattle by yourself. And if you do that, then you as well don't need to pay any income tax. Congratulations. It's not just me, right? And I've spoken about this whole thing about this whole situation is that, and I've even given, my whole reality sense on this thing is like, if you're going to start a business and then lose all of your money, you're better off not starting your business, okay? And how do you overcome that situation? Right? You make the money first. Don't start your business. Nobody cares about your business, all right? Your business is going to fail. Make the money first, okay? Make the money first. And if you make the money first, then now you don't have to worry because you already know that you're making money. All right, make the money first, okay? If you make the money first, then after you make the money, start your business. All right, and then you can get your tax write-offs just like I do, okay? That's the whole thing about this is that, if you legitimately think it's unfair, oh my God, if you legitimately think it's unfair, then you go and do it. Nobody's stopping you. Let's see it, right? I mean, I probably run about 150, 200 cattle a year. All right, by myself. All right, and that's what I had to do to effectively achieve what I do. All right, I effectively had to do that by myself. And when I did that, I got these tax benefits. And if you think it's unfair, then you go and do it, okay? Nobody's stopping you. Nobody cares about your worthless opinion. You go and do it. Go and buy yourself 200 cattle. Go and buy yourself 250 cattle a year. Take care of them by yourself. Go and buy them yourself. Grow the grass by yourself. And then have your mystical, magical journey. If not, at least keep your BS to yourself, okay? I mean, legitimately, nobody cares. I mean, there's a reason. I mean, you're poor and you're going to die poor. If that is legitimately how you think, oh my God, it's not fair. This guy doesn't owe any income tax. And it's like, I'm sitting here like investing 125, 150% of my income into my business. When you actually take a look at what I'm doing, I have to run like 200, 250 cattle by myself. Right? I mean, what do you mean it's unfair? Right? I mean, what do you mean? Right? I mean, and I've spoken about this too, right? I mean, if you actually take a look at my situation, I didn't even get paid until my 12th year. So if you think it's unfair, then you go and do it. All right? Nobody's stopping you. Nobody cares. I mean, if you think it's unfair, then you go and do it. I didn't get paid until my 15th year. I didn't get paid until like my 13th year, my 12th year. All right, and I've been working on this thing for 15 years, all right, and I didn't get paid for like the first 12. And so, if you think that is, and I've spoken about this, right? I mean, and when I actually take a look at what I'm doing, I effectively don't know anybody that's even doing 10%. Effectively, not even 10%. All right, and there's no reason for that. I don't, there's no reason for that. You should be able to do at least 10%. All right, and everybody can. If you have average IQ or whatever else, if you actually committed yourself and you actually tried, you should be able to do 10%. All right, and if you do 10%, you can practice for free. All right, because I've spoken about this. Like, if you just want the honest truth, I mean, I did not get paid for my first 12 years. All right, if you look at my situation right now and you say, oh my God, this is unfair. This is a guy, doing massively well for himself, and oh my God, now it's unfair. Then trust me, I don't care. Why would I care? All right, if it comes down to it, I will legitimately leave you to die poor by yourself, okay? I will go and be rich by myself if that's what it comes down to. All right, but when you actually take a look at what I'm doing, do you legitimately think that it's unfair? Is that even a reasonable thing to think? I started this farm by myself and I run about 200 cattle a year by myself. Maybe even more. Do you legitimately think that is unfair? And if you do, then you go and do it. See how unfair it is, right? Start yourself a farm, learn how to grow grass, learn how to run cattle, start yourself a business, and then you do it. All right? then you do it, right? I mean, nobody cares about your opinion, okay? You know, you're poor, you're gonna die poor, you're practically a bum already, and you're probably stuck like that forever. All right, you know, I don't know how else to put it. And I'm not telling you, I'm not telling you some illegal thing. This is how the system works. I am telling you how to play the game. This is how you play the game. All right, I don't make the rules. I don't break the law. This is how you play the game. When I take debt, the reason that I take debt is because I have a balance sheet that is in the net positive. The most debt that I will ever take is a 1-to-1 leverage, and I probably won't even do that. Right now, I'm leveraged maybe about 70%. All right, and the reason that I do that is because I take the debt and I purchase tax-deductible assets at their appraisal values. All right, and when I purchase assets, what kind of assets am I looking for, right? Well, number one, okay, and I spoke about this in terms of the levels of investing. All right, when it comes to the levels of investing, number one is that, you know, at the very early stages of investment, you should begin to understand your investment. Why are you putting your money in this investment? That is something that you should understand. That is the fundamental building block for everything else that you will do investing. Understanding your investment. That's the most important thing. Understand your investment. When it comes to an investment, right, and I spoke about this in terms of my whole sense of the thing. It's like, what makes an investment a good investment? Large amount of money. Something like the S&P 500. Massive market cap. A large amount of money in it, and it's a sound investment. And it produces you a positive return. Because if you have an investment that produces you a positive return and it is a good investment, that investment will effectively, theoretically, never go to zero. You're not going to see, the American economy is not going to zero. I don't know how else to put this. The American economy is not going to zero. The American economy is the best economy in the world. By a long shot, it's not going to zero. If it gets anywhere, even, whatever, right? I mean, 10, 20%, whatever, down, people will buy it. Why? Because the American economy is the best economy on the planet. That's why. All right, America is the best economy in the world. All right, it doesn't get any better. So and here's the thing. If you legitimately find some oh my God, well, I found some stock in some, foreign country. I found some, bond in a foreign country, and I believe that my money will be better in this investment, then go and put your money in that investment, okay? But, for most people, your money will be better. For most people, I mean, unless you strategically understand some foreign investment to a very high level, your money is probably better off in American investments. Probably is, okay? Almost always. Your money will be better off invested in America than any other country on the planet. America has the best economy in the world. By a long shot. It's not even close. All right, and so, the S&P 500 is a good example of this. It produces a dividend, right? 1.27%. Theoretically, you cannot lose money on the S&P 500 because that, the S&P 500 is a gauge for the entire economy. The American economy is not going to zero. And it produces a dividend. If you hold on to it for long enough, theoretically, you will always produce a positive return because there is a dividend. The U.S. Treasury bond is another good example of a good investment. The U.S. Treasury bond, the yield of the U.S. Treasury bond effectively gauges the interest rate for the entire economy. If the U.S. Treasury bond, if the certificate price of the U.S. Treasury bond crashes, if it goes to zero, you will have a lot more to worry about than your investment portfolio or the yield of your bond. Why? Because the price of a loaf of bread will be $500, $1,000. All right, there's only one reason for interest rates to skyrocket, and that is uncontrollable inflation. All right, massive levels of inflation, hyperinflation. So it's if you hold the U.S. Treasury bond, and if the certificate price of your bond legitimately goes to zero, then it doesn't matter. All right, it doesn't matter to begin with. I mean, you're legitimately, have fun, buying a loaf of bread for $1,000. All right, the U.S. Treasury bond, the U.S. dollar, is effectively, the global standard for money. Okay, you could go and spend U.S. dollars anywhere. All right, and so if you understand your investment. All right, and I've already said this whole thing too about farming, right? But it's like if you legitimately want to become a farmer, and and I show you how I do it, right? And when you take a look at what I'm doing, I effectively have like the best results, some of the best results known to mankind. All right, my results are extraordinarily good. I don't even know anybody even doing 10%. All right, I legitimately don't, and I'm not bragging about it. I'm telling you the truth. I tell you exactly how I do everything. This is how I grow the grass. This is how I run my business, right? I'm talking to you about leverage right now. How much leverage do I use? Why do I utilize leverage? What do I do with that leverage, right? Do I go and buy myself a trip to Disneyland? No, I do not go and buy myself a trip to Disneyland. All right, do I expand the size of my house? No, I don't go and expand the size of my house. What do I do with the debt? I purchase an equitable asset that is tax deductible at its appraisal value. All right, when it comes to the appraisal value of something like a commodity, how do you figure out the appraisal value of a commodity? You go on the stock market and you look it up, and boom, it's a number right there. It will legitimately tell you 800-pound steer, #1 type commodity animal, sells for this much money. All right, it's on the stock market. You just go and you look it up. You don't even have to figure it out. You just look it up on the stock market. If you want to figure out how much the price for a bushel of corn is, let's say we're talking about a different commodity. If you want to figure out how much an ounce of silver costs, if you want to figure out how much an ounce of gold costs, if you want to figure out how much a tonnage of urea costs, any of these commodities, they're all done the same way. How do you do it? If you want to get a rough idea for what your commodity is worth, how do you figure that out? You go on the stock market and you look it up. Price of corn, price of gold, price of silver, and the commodity price will be right there in front of you. You can go on you can go on the internet and just look it up, and it will be on the stock market. That's how you figure out the price of your commodity. All right, that's how you do that. Right, depending on what asset we're talking about, there are different ways to appraise different assets. If you want to figure out what the price of your land is, how do you do that? You go to the bank and you ask the banker. If you want to get a rough idea for what is the equitable value of your business, how do you do that? You take a look at how much money your business is making, and then you multiply it. Right, depending on how your business has been doing over the last, and the future outlook of your business, the multiple will be different. It's very simple stuff. None of this stuff is going to change. Okay, probably not. I'm giving you legitimate information. Okay, I'm giving you the best information that I have. I'm not lying to you. I'm not giving you the wrong information, and then maliciously I'm giving you the best information that I can. All right, you want to appraise a commodity. How do you do that? You go on the stock market and you look it up. You want to appraise the value of a land. How do you do that? You go to the bank and you ask the banker how much the land is worth. All right, you want to figure out how much a business is worth. How do you do that? You take a look at how much money the business is making. Has the business been making more money every year? Yes or no? It's a very simple question. When you take a look at the balance sheet of a business, you should be able to tell instantaneously whether that business is doing well or not. Right? If your business is going sideways, if you have effectively made the same amount of money every single year for a long time, and you're actually, looking to make the same amount of money forever, for the near, for the long-term future, then your multiple will be lower. All right, and when you have a bad asset, which is a majority of assets are not some spectacular asset. They're either just decent or they're not good. It's very rare, and I've even spoken about this, in terms of a business sense. Let's just take a look at my balance sheet, right? When you take a look at what I'm doing, I'm the guy who's running the thing, right? I run this business, and when you take a look at my balance sheet, whatever, right? My business effectively has been making more money every year for several years in a row, right? My business has been making more money every year for several years in a row. And I've actually, when you actually take a look at what I'm doing, my business will actually produce more money. I would actually reasonably anticipate that I actually increase my income by somewhere between about 300 and 500% by the end of the year. How will I do that? Reinvesting my earnings and leveraging it against a portion of my balance sheet. That's how I will do it, right? Very simple stuff. It's not some debatable thing. It's not some confusing thing. I will reinvest the money that I make, and then I will leverage against a percentage of my balance sheet. And that will expand my business pretty drastically. Very simple stuff, right? It's not confusing. All right, and when I do that, I effectively get tax benefits, and I'm actually looking to invest about 125 to 150% of my money by the end of the year. That's usually what I shoot for, because when I do that, I take a look at it, and I have stabilized animals, and the animals have gotten bigger, and et cetera, whatever it may be, and then I get my tax benefits from doing that. All right, and but those are the new animals. I brought them in at about 400 pounds. I paid commodity prices for them. And, I'll probably end up selling them with the rest of the animals here in about 3 months. And, I'll even probably end up buying myself a piece of land between now and the next 2 or 3 months. I found a piece of land that I'm looking at. I'll go and take a look at it this weekend. And, if it's even anywhere decently good, I'll probably just end up buying it, okay? And that's it for me today, YouTube. Y'all have a good one.